Most people have given up on motivation. I mean, why wouldn't they? In a world where hustle culture and business gurus tote discipline as the be-all end-all. Discipline. It's no surprise that anyone even thinking about standing up for motivation feels like they'll be slapped upside their head and chewed out because it's weak. Discipline is the way. It's how the strong, the successful accomplish cars, freedom, and riches. Except, is it? If you're new here, I'm Dante Sy, and I've worked with multiple 7 to 8 figure businesses across various industries. In this video, we're diving into discipline, the lie you've been sold, why that's hurting progress towards your goals, and what you can do instead, what actually works, and more likely than not, what the people you look up to actually use to achieve success. Discipline, the trait of choosing to act despite a lack of motivation. Discipline is a great trait, don't get me wrong. It's inspiring, marketable, and the true marker of your character when the going gets tough and you don't have any hope or motivation left to rely on. But is it the only thing you should rely on? I keep hearing this quote circulating around in different forms, but it goes something along the lines of, motivation is unreliable, discipline is the key. While it may be true, it's somewhat of a half-truth that doesn't really give the whole picture. And more importantly, is this the most productive worldview? Will viewing things this way be most conducive to growth and reaching your goals? I would wager no. Let me tell you why. Deep in the heart of this inspiring, motivational sentiment is a very damaging assumption that motivation is nearly, if not entirely, useless because it isn't always reliable. Therefore, discipline is the path to success. Let me be clear. Discipline is a useful and strong trait to cultivate, but not more so than mastering your motivation, because your motivation, your motives, your reasons for doing what you do are the primary drivers of your behavior. Discipline is a last resort. Let's define motivation before we move forward. Motivation. The reason or reasons one has for acting or behaving in a particular way. And so for optimizing for outcomes, you can measure the strength of your motivation by the level of alignment between your internal motives and your desired external behavior. The strength of your reasons. Low motivation, low reasons for behaving a certain way is a lack of internal alignment with your stated goals. High motivation is the opposite. When motivation gets low, discipline is required to compensate for the lack of emotional buy-in. But discipline is costly and mentally taxing on your bandwidth. Inefficient when compared to motivation from a fuel efficiency standpoint. Decades of research in self-determination theory show that intrinsic motives sustain behavior longer than willpower alone. My point is this: motivation isn't a feeling, it's alignment. And when you optimize for it, you don't need to white knuckle through every task. This minimizes friction and optimizes for sustainability. To ignore motivation and rely solely on discipline is like saying you want to run the race on your knees because your ankles give out sometimes and it's unreliable to run. Yeah, it makes no sense. Why would you want to make it harder on yourself? I've seen this again and again in beginners, and I think it's actually become sort of a constraint in itself. Energy goes towards being disciplined rather than actually doing what needs to be done. They seem to have this assumption that everything will suck and that you can't enjoy any part of the process or else you'll be weak. They've equated discipline with cynicism. That is fundamentally not true. In fact, for any of you that have this worldview, I think it does you a tremendous disservice because that's the exact opposite of true. You need to enjoy what you're doing on some level to create a sustainable workflow. I think the reason people gravitate towards this extreme is because in the beginning, it seems like the ultimate answer. I mean, most people do absolutely nothing. And so the answer in the beginning is to run toward pain. But is that the only answer? No, that's just step one. Stop avoiding the work, i.e., commit. You can watch my video on that here if you find it extremely hard to work. In it, I give you the exact step-by-step guide to solve this. But back to the point, discipline is the answer in the beginning, but it's an incomplete view of the system. Let's map this out. Here's the goal you want to accomplish. Here's the path, and here are the major challenges. Applying this model to a tangible goal, take building a business, which if you enjoy writing and want help with, I do have coaching and curriculum below. You have the day-to-day tasks, laying bricks and chipping away at the mountain of work to build projects. Then along the way, you have the challenges and lessons to be learned. In the beginning, discipline is required, but for what? It's used as fuel to give you enough energy to solve this challenge when your motivations don't align with completing it. So if discipline is the activation energy needed to face hard challenges, then what do you rely on in between? Alignment, motivation. Aligning your identity with your goals in turn creates the motivation to move forward. You don't wake up every single day and wish you could eat pizza and drink with your buddies. It's not how it works. You learn lessons and gain experience. You become somebody else with different values. You don't want to cheat on your diet because it threatens your new identity. You don't want to go on a 3-day drinking bender because it goes against everything you've been working towards. You have different motives. Do you think every single person that's successful went through the entire process, entire work days, entire work weeks, just grueling the entire time, hating their life? No, they changed their identity, and these new actions became part of who they are. This isn't an overnight process. Your alignment will waver because these thought patterns and values, this identity, is new. You're installing new conditioning, a new worldview that aligns with your goals. You are becoming someone else. This is where education and motivational content actually aid the process. You're exposing yourself to better conditioning, better programming. If you're still relying on discipline to get basic tasks done, you need to focus on reinforcing and maintaining alignment. This is the way you think, the behaviors you do, the people you allow into your life, the way you respond to adversity. And you especially have to take care of your environment. Many people underestimate the importance of cultivating an environment that supports your goals, or at the very least, doesn't sabotage them. If you are constantly choosing between accepting party invites and working, you're embedded in a culture that actively erodes the identity that you need to protect. The environment is literally draining your motivation by asserting misalignment. And so if it hurts to work every day, many times the answer isn't to just push through discipline. It's to figure out what alternative options you haven't yet eliminated that keep tugging on your psyche every day, optimizing alignment, motivation. Let's get into counter arguments. Dante, accomplishing big goals is hard. You need to be able to push through. You can't rely on your feelings. Again, a half-truth. It's a false dichotomy. You don't need to choose between discipline and motivation. Discipline is part of the motivational system. Said differently, you don't need to choose between feeling like doing it and working when you don't feel like doing it. They're different parts of the same system. You can and should optimize both. I know this is very abstract and maybe hard to visualize. To illustrate the point, here's some graphics. You can pause here if you'd like. Hopefully now you can see my point. You should want as least friction as possible to increase your output. Ideally, you only use discipline when you need to. I mean, I guess you could push the bounds and grow your discipline capacity every day, but why? That's not the goal. Again, why would you make it harder on yourself? So you can seem strong, seem hardcore? You know what's actually hardcore? Not caring what other people think and doing what you need to win. Those who have success preach discipline because it is important, especially for beginners, but it's not the entire skill stack. And it especially isn't a replacement for optimizing your motivation. If optimizing discipline is loading the bomb shelter for when things get bad, optimizing motivation is learning how to be a good leader so you can minimize the chance of going DEFCON 1. It's annoying, but it's much better than the alternative. So how exactly do you optimize for alignment or motivation? I'm gonna give you 3 ways that work exceptionally well, derived from principles of behavioral psychology. Method number 1 is use pain. Pain creates motivation. One of the strongest drivers of human behavior is alleviating pain. This is why it's so hard to start. Why you even need discipline in the first place is because you're avoiding pain. By nature of choosing to care about this, you're creating pain. You're choosing a worldview where there are endless problems to solve. Of course, the default response is avoidance. But instead of hating this, we can actually alchemize this and use this principle in reverse. Let me ask you this. If someone had kidnapped your family and said that they had 6 months to live unless you reached your goals, would you act? Yes. Why? Because in that situation, the pain of your current life would be greater than the pain of acting. Obviously, it's a little bit of an extreme example, but it illustrates the point. We can use our pain aversion to empower us instead of pacifying us. If you actually want change, this is the surest way to do it. This is why so many of the greatest success stories come after the greatest pain, after hitting rock bottom. Goggins was 300 pounds, making $1,000 a month and spraying cockroaches for a living. That pain woke him up. My family didn't know how we were gonna pay next month's rent. That woke me up. To be clear, the lesson is not to throw your life down the drain, but you should do your best to create a controlled environment with real pressure and, most importantly, friction to walk back from. For me, I had to call my friends and talk about my family situation so they would stop inviting me out and giving me a path to escapism. I cried on the phone. It was a hard conversation, but I would do it 1,000,000 times over because it put me in the position to do what I needed to do. Pain creates motivation. The question is, what can you do in your life right now? What comforts can you cut that are numbing you from the pain of a mediocre life? Rip the band-aid off, jump in the pool. You have no choice but to swim. And the best part is, you almost always find that it's not as bad as you thought. Method 2 is cognitive mirroring. I'm sure you've heard the phrase by now. You're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with. There's psychological reasons for that. Humans are social creatures. We've evolved to co-regulate and empathize with each other because it promotes pro-social behaviors. Humans who cooperate survived more than humans who didn't. Therefore, we learn to mirror people. And your brain does this through what are called mirror neurons. Mirror neurons are a class of neuron that modulate their activity both when an individual executes a specific motor act and when they observe the same or similar act performed by another individual. That's just fancy talk for saying seeing others exhibit a certain behavior reinforces that same neural pathway in your brain. If I see John drink coffee every day, I'm more likely to drink coffee. You subconsciously become more like the people that you surround yourself with. You absorb their identities. Again, this can be to your detriment or to your benefit. Your environment can work for you or against you. Don't waste bandwidth fighting your environment if you can change it. Trust me, the drain is not fun. Now, to take advantage of this in the positive direction, I'll show you something that you've probably never heard of before. The internet. We can curate our digital environment, which you probably spend a lot of your free time in anyways, to contain only the thinkers, the people that we want to be more like. Every time somebody pops up in your feed, ask yourself, do you want to be more like this person? If not, ruthlessly prune them out. It sounds obvious, but you will absorb what you consume. That's the nature of it. Who do you want to be more like? Who thinks in the ways that you would like to? It doesn't have to be me. Create a list, choose these people, and curate your environment for success. Method 3 is systemize alignment. What gets tracked gets worked on. Your alignment, your motivation, is something that you need to pay attention to and protect every single day. Your mind will be pulled other directions. You may accidentally spend 40 minutes watching something that's just pure entertainment. If you'd like to, that's your choice. Sometimes we need breaks. But the point is to recognize your mental state at any given moment. Understand how far you are outside the bounds of where you're supposed to be, and walk back. Again, hard to visualize, so I'll give an analogy. Imagine life is an endless playground. There's endless adventures and experiences to be had on the playground, but it's become shallow fun. Among the playground, you set up your house, your home base. This represents your mission, your new conditioning, alignment. The reason you built the house is because you're tunneling underneath it, trying to escape to something deeper, meaningful, and fulfilling, the utopia. Every day you tunnel, but you're not entirely sure you'll reach the utopia. Everyone tells you you're going the right direction, yet there's no guarantee. You don't even know how far or close you are. One day you wake up, and the playground calls to you. So much more fun than endless tunneling. You play for hours until you realize you've left the bounds of your property. Now you have a choice. Do you keep playing, or do you walk back into the property and continue tunneling your way to a better future? Walk back. Believe in yourself. Read your journal entries and remind yourself why you're doing this. Watch the motivational content and latch onto the conditioning of others. Walk back. It's simple, but it's not easy. And what's insidious is that this life, this playground, will try to convince you that it's not worth it, that the utopia isn't real. You get pulled away. You'll forget why you're having fun about the property. But you have to recognize when that happens and walk back. Again, this is extremely difficult if you don't make the conscious effort to remember, but you've already been down that road. So walk back every time, no matter how far you wander. Most people think discipline is the ultimate strength, that the ones who grind the hardest are the ones who win. But the truth is, anyone can grind. What's rare, and the only thing that lets you stake it out long term, is alignment. When your motives, your habits, and your environment all reinforce the same direction, you don't have to force yourself to move anymore. You want to. That's what real freedom looks like. Not a constant war with yourself, just the quiet conviction of somebody who knows where they're going and why. So don't just work harder. Don't just be disciplined. Build alignment. Protect your motivation like it's oxygen, because it is. There's a lot of conflicting advice and incongruent messaging out there. Hopefully I've been able to clear these up and bring you closer to your goals. Optimize your motivation and discipline. Take breaks occasionally to deload systemic fatigue. Listen to your body so you don't burn out. And most of all, enjoy the process. Business is about staying in the game and learning skills to increase your earning potential. The more consistent and faster you iterate, the faster you learn. If you like writing and want an easily accessible beginner business that can double your income in 90 days, check the link below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.